yeah, there is a dislike of young black men making money and being successful, and there's a part of it's jealousy, part of it is to desperately keep the status quo within life, I guess, for the aging white man. If you read Jonathan Liu's piece in The Guardian about the Mail on Sundays piece about Rashford, there is a certain part of, generally these newspapers are run by white middle-class men, probably in their 50s, who, make targets of people who are in the public eye, have money. They have this terrible problem with Rashford, that he's a very eloquent young man, speaks well, stands for everything that's right, and there is this sign of, you create an enemy to, it's just, it's a story as old as time. Again, with, say, the right-wing press, the Mail's front pages for years are about, make enemy of immigrants. And so there always this idea of creating a common enemy. And so if they can create an enemy of footballers, these rich, powerful, they are powerful people. I hate to think how many million followers Rashford has on Twitter, and that's how he gets things done now. It's the changing world, and a lot of these older white editors don't understand this. And so if you can attack, and they've struggled to find anything to actually attack. With Rashford, it's crazy. Then he buys houses. You attack a man for buying houses to rent out. This is everything you stand for as the Mail, to make money and to keep making money. And
FOOTY 258, back here again. I'm your host, John Antonio Brown, and we have another episode of Supporter Section. Just before I get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. And if you like what we're saying in the video, I'm not going to force you to like the video now, but if you like what we're saying in the video, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so, then also press the like button as well and drop a comment. I'm going to introduce my guest today. Today we have with me someone I've known for a while now. I've had a good relationship, not quite usual with, footballers and people from the media, but I'm trying to change that. He's a freelancer, worked with many newspapers and companies throughout the country. And, he's always putting out great articles, reading them, and about some of my friends in the game. Today we have with me Will Unwin. How are you doing?
Very well. How are you? That's the nicest introduction I've ever had.
No,
my mum's not that nice about me, so
it's Christmas soon. So
thank you very much.
It's Christmas soon, so that's a little present. But before I go any further, this is the second journalist I've had on, and I feel like these conversations are always good because you can get to know how a person is, who is, writing certain things about you, and sometimes good, sometimes they can be deemed as not so good if you're a footballer, but it comes with the game. And, as long as it's the truth, from my point of view, I'm okay with what any journalist writes about me, to be honest. But, we're going to kind of get into that. Just to talk about your upbringing, where are you from in the country, and how did you have this personality to go into the field you are into to today?
So I'm from Manchester, so East Manchester, which if your older viewers, if you remember Main Road Football Stadium, I live basically 200 yards away from that, which was where the old Man City training ground was at Platt Lane, which I'm sure many of your friends have played at if you haven't, Jordan. So I was, and then moved to a different part of East Manchester, sort of a very sort of working class area in Manchester, is where I'm from. And I was a City fan from a young age, and a Man City season ticket holder from the age of 10. although my parents don't really care about football. So
Okay.
I went with a friend, but yeah, my mum was very doting and took me to play lots of Sunday League all over the Northwest, and so yeah, supported City from a very young age and followed them ever since. So from the low moments to the inexplicably good times at the moment. So that's my football story very early on, I guess. Yeah, and I lived abroad. I lived in Bilbao for a year in Spain, and so I have quite an interest in Spanish football and especially Athletic Bilbao. So I went to watch them quite a lot when I was there, and lots of smaller teams in the Basque Country as well. Um, so that's my football story, I guess.
Yeah.
In a very
What was that
brief
like?
nutshell.
Living in Spain for one, but also a very different part of Spain, being the Basque area.
Yeah, well, I could sort of pick where I wanted to move, and I thought it was very different. It's got more rain than Manchester, so which so I was used to the weather at least. Um, yeah, no, it's a fascinating place to live. Very different culture. They're a big fan of the British over there because the British took football, and so hence why Athletic Bilbao are called Athletic and not Atletico like in Madrid. And they have the colours of red and white due to the Dockers from Southampton taking kits over. Historians might correct me on that, but it's about right. So yeah, it's a fascinating place. Very good food culture. Um, and the football team's obviously very interesting, very different, because they only play Basque players, so people from the region. So it's a region of about, I'm going to say, 3.4 million. So yeah, it's very similar to Manchester City only picking players from Greater Manchester, and they've survived in the top flight, won leagues, won cups. A strong history in Europe, and so yeah, no, it's a fascinating football culture, and there's only one team in town, and they've got a 60,000 seater stadium, and on a weekend, the whole place is red and white. You just see anything you can do at the weekend. Everything just builds up to the match. Saturday night or Sunday night or whatever. So it's an incredible place to watch football.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's probably a place where like you said, everything's built up until the weekend. As a kid, all you want to do probably is play for Bilbao, and you probably have a very good chance, if you're from the region. And I can imagine all the kids there have a lot of hopes and dreams to achieve that. If not, be involved in it in some type of way, which is a very cool thing to be a part of, right? Did you grow up with any footballers in your area in Manchester?
No. At school, there was a lad in the year below me that went on to play. He was at City, and he played in the Youth Cup final for City. A guy called Paul Marshall. He must be about 30 now. He played for Blackpool and Port Vale in the league very briefly, and then sort of drifted down the leagues. So yeah, he was
Okay.
He was in our school. We played against Michael Rains, who's from Wivenshaw somewhere, I think. And now he went on to play for Stockport, and he moved up to Chelsea, I think.
Okay.
I know was that Worsley, sorry, but he had a sort of strong football career in the lower leagues. So I remember playing against him, but yeah, no one of note that really stands out. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm completely lying now. When I was playing Sunday League, we played against this team who had strong links to Ajax, and I played central midfield. And in their midfield was Michael Johnson, the City midfielder.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was me against him. So I taught him everything he knew. Yeah, he was a fantastic footballer. And,
he was a fantastic prospect coming through.
He would have played for England easily. That season under Sven, where it was Harman, Alano, and Michael Johnson. It would have been incredible. And injuries and his personal decision not to carry on playing football. I guess you put it. He's done interviews about it now and why he didn't really particularly enjoy football and the things that came with it. But yeah, he was he was an excellent player. But yeah, he was very. Even then, you've gone up through the academies and things like that. A lot of times when you're playing in other schools, or whatever, the best player on their position is probably at a club or something. Is generally quite an arrogant guy, and showing off and making sure that he's the best player. Whereas Michael Johnson, you wouldn't have remembered him, like his personality. I worked for Man City very briefly, and I had a conversation with him, and he was quite a very shy bloke who just didn't have that arrogance about him that, especially at a young age, you find footballers where they're just scoring 5 goals against you, and they make you know that they're a lot better than you. So he was a very quiet, unassuming footballer even at that age.
Do you think, 2 questions, do you think the personality is built up from, other reasons in terms of just that competitive nature in football? That's the first question I have for you. What makes the footballer sometimes become or come across as arrogant?
I think the fact that they're probably better than you and they know it is a general thing. And I'm of the belief, and a lot of people criticise arrogant footballers, but you're not going to get to the top level of a profession, whether it's football, cricket, accountancy, without having some arrogance and confidence in your ability. And that's, maybe that was one of Michael's problems, that he just didn't have that confidence to carry it on, and that self-belief. And so I think, that arrogance of being better than everyone and wanting to show that you're better than everyone is a good thing. When you're someone like me playing football at the age of 10, realising maybe I'm not going to be a professional footballer, my dreams are over, and I've not hit puberty, it's it's slightly disheartening. But for them, that's the confidence you need. I think that's why those people carry on, because they have that arrogance, they have that confidence to do that skill that I think I could probably do in my head, but I'm never going to be able to pull it off. That's it's a different mindset that you don't have when you're a quiet lad that, like me, possibly. But it's just when you have that talent, and you can express it, then it must be one of the most fantastic feelings as any youngster getting the best of your peers.
Here at FOOTY 258, we're proud to present you with the best football-specific content. We work with many companies and many ballers to give you, the viewers, the best content possible. You, the viewer, we're always looking to help you improve your skill set. In order for you to improve your skill set and for us to keep making these videos, please click the link down below and buy some equipment. The equipment helps us run this channel, and also you subscribing to the channel helps us producing more of these videos to help you with your skill set and your knowledge of the game. Thank you for supporting FOOTY 258.
Yeah, and the second thing I was going to say, which you elaborated on, some footballers, every footballer is different, We have different personalities, different backgrounds, cultures, everything like that. And, not everyone's the same. So do you always kind of get confused when it's a situation where you just mentioned there where Michael Johnson dropped out the game and, he had a chance to really continue and progress his career? Do you get surprised when that happens?
I think you're always surprised if someone like, especially as talented as him, drops out of the game at 26 maybe. I think you're surprised at that. I think the older you get as a person, the more everyone will say, "Oh, he's quit football. Well, there must be something wrong with him. Oh, what an idiot! He's living the dream. Why would you do that?" And that's what a lot of people say. But the longer you work in this industry, and just generally, the more mature and older you get, you realise that the personalities in football sort of, it's still the same spectrum as it's going to be in any other industry. You do have those very quiet, assuming players that incredibly talented. That maybe that arrogance or whatever means that they don't reach Man City, Liverpool now, but they're still incredibly good players, and it's a very diverse workforce. It's probably the most diverse workforce in the country. You've got players coming from South America, across Europe, Asia, America. I was the amount of languages in in a dressing room must be incredible. And so, yeah, you're going to get lots of different personalities, and everyone reacts to different situations in different ways. And I know I interviewed Ollie Gill, who you might remember, who's David Gill's son that was at United, won Reserve Team Player of the Year, was on the bench for a couple of Premier League games and Champions League game, and he just sort of said, "No, don't fancy this. I'm going to go to uni instead." And it's a rich tapestry of a sport, and you are going to just personalities. And again, some people don't want to be in the limelight, and will decide that quite early on. And that they just don't enjoy it. And I speak to a lot of players in, say, League 1, 2 conference that are just like, well, I'm just doing it for the sake of it because I don't know anything else now. And so those sort of people that do have, to turn around and say, actually, no, football's not for me, are probably the stronger personalities. No offence to anyone in League 1, 2. But yeah, so I'm not surprised when people do it now. It's, and especially, if you're sensible, if you get to 26, you're probably quite financially stable. And so you think, well, actually, I'm not enjoying it. It's not, I don't need to do this anymore. So, yeah, and fair play to anyone that makes that decision, because it's not easy, regardless. And the physical effects of playing for 10 years are quite hard anyway. So no, I'm never surprised when people want to move away.
Yeah, going back to Man City, your first ever game, do you remember that?
Yeah. So my parents weren't big football fans at all. But my brother's a United fan, so that's probably a sign of how little they care about football. But in the first season of the Premier League, 92-93, we went to the Manchester Derby at Main Road.
Wow.
So I don't know how my dad got tickets, but they were right in the main stand. I need to ask him one day. And me and my brother and him went, and City drew 1-1. Niall Quinn scored for us and Cantona scored for them. Can't remember in which order, but so
that's
it was 1-1.
Two big players right there.
So, I think Cantona was my brother's hero and Niall Quinn was mine, the first player to ever get his name on the back of my shirt. So
really,
yeah. In the good old days, where it was made out of like velvet, and it just whenever you washed it, it just cracked and fell off after about a day. But yeah, when City's shop was about as big as this room, and there's just one old lady that you had to go get everything from. She had to go get it from the back. Yeah, good old days.
Do you miss the days like that, in terms of how football's so corporate now? And
the corporate element of football's dreadful. And obviously, working in the industry and whatnot, you do sort of struggle at times to have that set. You definitely don't. Well, I struggle to have the same passion for every game, and I always, people kill me for this, but you'll never get a better. I was there for City against QPR. Last day of the season, 2-1 down in injury time, or 90th minute, and we scored 2 and 1. And you'll never get a feeling like that in football again. And so everything from that is just sort of, it's just never going to reach that level. So I have a struggle. It's like, well, I've had the best moment in football. It's never going to compete. The corporate element is, it's a pain. You sign up to any football club's newsletters, and then you're bombarded with every single sponsor's trying to sell you something. Ticket prices go up. It's not. It's even in the 90s, it was definitely not that corporate. I remember getting tickets for the players' lounge, and all the players walked in, and you could speak to anyone now. You got no chance.
Protected.
I think City have banned players signing things outside the training ground, whereas when I was a kid, you could pretty much walk into the training ground and do what you wanted. So things like that. And obviously there is a massive disconnect now between fans and players. People argue that you can be closer because of social media, say, but the actual relationship is a completely different world.
Yeah, we'll get onto that a bit later. Actually, I had that written down to discuss. Also touching on what you just said, adding to your point, it's not just the fans who are disconnected. It's also, I feel like the youth team is disconnected to the first team. So we had Kia and Brian on here, someone who know.
He's from very close to me in Manchester, but yeah, he went to the same school as me, but he's far younger than me, so I couldn't claim him as someone I'd heard.
Yeah, someone who you know of, and he shared a story on this channel where Pep, when he came in, he just put all the youth players out the building, and it became their own building. So that also provides a disconnect between the youth and the first team players. Back in the day, you would have to wash the first team players' boots, and things like that, and they'll give you chores to do, and you get to know them, and that inspiration is real. Whereas if you're just training and you're the top guy in your training facility, you have no one to look forward to, and maybe that can be a problem, right?
Yeah, obviously you mentioned there about cleaning boots stuff, and so players sort of stop doing that now. It's sort of seen as they shouldn't be doing these chores, and so from going to knowing players to not knowing players is a big issue. I think it was Antonio Conte at Chelsea, where the chat was he just he wouldn't walk from his training pitch to another to see the under-18s play, and it it is a big problem that if you're not being seen, especially with City now, say if you get to 18, you're not going to go in the first team unless you're Phil Foden. And so what's the next move? You're getting sent out to one of about 5 different clubs. And they have loan managers now, so it's Jolie Lescott. But that's, I'm sure Jolie does a fine job. But it's just a WhatsApp group,
Yeah.
I'm in hundreds of them.
Yeah.
It's connection, but it's like keeping up with friends from home. You're not going to see them. They don't really have that great interest. Mm-hmm. And essentially now, I would argue that with Premier League youth academies, they're just there to make sure that that
bringing a profit.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was stumbling to say. But yeah, bringing a profit. You look at all those players that will make it now to get to the point where they'll be sold at 21 after 2 or 3 loans for 2, 3, 4 million pounds. That's great business. Whereas before, players would get to 18, so you're not good enough, you're out the door. Whereas now they'll be kept on, and Chelsea got hundreds of, but lots of players got to the point where they have 44 players out on loan. That's because they're getting them to a point where they can make money on them.
Yeah,
because releasing them at 18 is a way. They've put in. Fair enough. The clubs have put in that effort to train players, and they want to make the money out of them. Whereas before they were thought, well, you're not good enough now, so cheerio. And obviously, a lot of people will prove them wrong. So yeah, it's I think it's definitely more of a business thing to come through the academy. Speaking to kids that started at 6 or something in the City Academy. I was like, I don't think I even knew how to kick a ball at 6. So it's a very strange concept to me. Starting at that age, anyone could identify vague talent. But my experience as a child was that the best player was generally the biggest. So that catches up with you eventually. So I can't see how you can find anyone at the age of 6 that you're going to guarantee a professional football career with.
Yeah, it's not easy. We mentioned it on this channel before, being groomed from such a young age and going up the age groups, and being told about not being able to fulfill your dream. This was a dream that was pumped into your head from such a young age. So touching on the passing of the youth player from Man City's academy, who is to blame in that situation, do you think? If there is a blame, or if anyone is to blame?
Obviously, I'd like to think that suicide is preventable in many, so obviously, there's no individual to blame. Obviously, the system has certain issues where there's not enough support, where, you have been in an academy system for so many years and then you're sort of pushed out, even with someone like City where, if you're in the academy, you're sent to a certain school now. It's a good school in Manchester, St Bede's, but then to be sort of pushed out with, your secondary options are pretty few and far between at that point when you've had one goal, and it's not like they're helping you find a new club or anything like that, as far as I can see. And of course, 16, 17 is probably when you're most vulnerable, to knockbacks in your mentality, whether it's exam results or anything like that. It's a very tough age. So I think this, it does need that level of support outside of a club, especially, they are big businesses. It's a very strange one. It's not like accountancy firms are building you from the age of 6 to say you're going to be an accountant,
Mm-hmm.
But you are grooming people to your football, and then when you say no, but when you're that close, no, you're not going to be good enough. And especially when you've had, I believe, the psychological trauma of such severe injuries at a young age, which because you're playing that, you're part of this sport. And I just think if you are, players that are going to be released at that age do need support, do need guidance, from whether it's the PFA or the clubs. Well, I assume both coming together to provide guidance of where you can go, what other clubs you can look at, and making sure that you're in the best possible place to have a career, whether it is in football or outside. There's lots of, very good educational options for anyone at that age still. And it's just making people aware of that. If you're going, even if, keeping fit, and again, but losing your routine of football as well, which is same, with a lot of industries, a lot of problems with the army where you leave the army and you lose routine. I know they're not exactly pure comparable, but you lose that routine, it is very difficult to take in anyone's life. And it's the same, especially at that age. You got released at 16, you just lost the routine of school probably, and you've just lost the routine of football, and you're just out with neither of them. So it must be an incredibly haunting position to be in. And obviously, can't imagine anyone, the feelings you must get to approach suicide. But yeah, it's just a level of support of people of that age, is definitely needed. And hopefully, at the very least, reviews will come and better plans will be put in place to help anyone in that same position.
Yeah, for sure. In the industry, I'm pretty sure that everyone can agree that we wouldn't want to see a situation like that again, especially the cause being and the root of it being football, So 100%, I feel like many ex-footballers maybe need to come in, play a part in, helping out current footballers as well. I can give first-hand information that I've had people come into my academy when I was playing in the academy system, and it would always be ex-footballers, and you would always look at them like, if they wasn't your idol and you're in that kind of bubble, you're thinking, you're not really taking in what they're saying. But if it's somebody where, you're trying to take that guy's shirt, you're trying to be him almost, if it's him giving you talks or youth team talks on if times get hard, or, you have to do this to be a Premier League player, then that's different motivation for me. I'm just speaking how I would look at things. So I think those are very much things that, could be thought of and put in place, to include into these academy systems and, PFA and whatnot. Yeah. Switching gears really quickly, for you during this pandemic, has much changed during your work, and what do you do? Could you explain to everybody?
What do I do? My work's been busier, to be honest. honest. It's been very, but we'll go sort of generally my work, say pre-pandemic. So I worked for the Guardian mainly. So before the pandemic hit, it was sort of 3 or 4 days a week there, and then I'd do 1 day a week doing proper news, ITV, which was quite good. Then obviously the pandemic hit, sports stopped, and news got very busy. So it sort of it changed. So I've been very lucky with that news has taken over where sport did for that sort of first 2 months, say up to May, June, which meant that I can still pay my rent. And so many freelancers, especially in sport, were in a very bad position. And so I was, I'd say very fortunate that I had that option. And then, sort of balanced back out again, where it's back to the relative norms as it was before. I spent a lot of time there was a lot of, at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of footballers that had nothing to do. So it was quite a good time to try and sort some interviews out. So I do a lot of interviews, various people, slightly generally not mainstream Premier League players, I think it would be fair to say. Did quite a few interviews, and obviously still quite a few going on. At the Guardian, do a bit of editing and a bit of writing. So some nights I'm editing the website, and then some weekends I'm doing minute-by-minute reports online, and then on top of that I'm doing feature interviews and stuff for the Guardian, and then anyone else that'll pay me to do interviews. So BBC did a feature on Benfica recently. The I newspaper did an interview with the Olympiacos manager. So anyone that'll pay me just to make sure I can keep a roof over my head. And as you know, sort of quite a lot of Englishmen abroad I've interviewed over my time. Just people with slightly different stories. Sometimes I don't find that you don't really get anywhere with interviewing Premier League players much nowadays. It's not particularly it's not that anyone's let me, but sorry.
Yeah, it's all PC, and you have to give
there's a lot of media. I'm sure you did media training at Arsenal or West Ham.
I'm media trained, but I know how to work my way around it. You of course, being media trained is very important, because you don't want to end up saying something that could potentially ruin, your credibility and potentially your career in some cases, if you're not very fortunate in your talent level, But at the end of the day, I feel like with media, it has to change, and these are the type of things that I want to speak about with you. Touching on the media. So how does a story get published? What is the process from, somebody writing the article, the writer, somebody editing it, and then publishing it? What is the process?
Are we talking about a news story?
So a rumor comes, like you guys probably get a lot of rumors, and you hear a lot of things in your time. Probably some secrets that you might have to take to the grave. But what happens from there? How do you fact check something and so forth, and how does it end up getting published into the newspaper?
Well, I'll speak about the Guardian. Other papers have different processes, and this is the process I understand most. And as you can see with tabloid media, especially with rumours, they're probably not as well sourced, but they are published and people read them. Essentially, what will happen with a news story, a journalist will have a story. Depending on where they've got this information, a lot of the time they'll get a first, someone says, well, Cristiano Ronaldo's re-signing for United. Fine. If they trust that person, then they'll probably go with it. A lot of the time, though, I say 95% of the time, you will go then to someone else. A lot of the time, you go to Manchester United football clubs to the press office and say, "Is this true?" And they'll give you a nonsense reply or confirm it. and they're not always truthful with you, the press office. Sorry, everyone.
Of course, yeah.
And it'll go in. The editor will commission it, get you to write a certain amount of words. If it's a legally interesting story, it'll go through a lawyer as well. You won't get that with a transfer story, say, but other things will need a lawyer to go through it. It'll go to the editor. The editor will generally then put it in a file. A sub-editor will read it, make sure everything reads okay, make sure all the various points are ticked off that's required, and generally after that, be put on the internet. It's not. It can be a very short process. It can be a very laborious process. If you're doing a feature, a very long feature, there can be a lot of back and forth. And to say, if you ever have to involve a media lawyer, it could take days, weeks, and months to get the sign off. That's generally the process. So, say with me, a lot of the time, I'm not always doing news. I'm doing more features and interviews. So I'll suggest an interview. I'll get a length to commission length, so say 900,000 words. When I've done the interview, I'll send it to the editor. They'll have some questions for me, probably. We might rejig it, depending on how good I am that day. And then it'll go through with a feature, it'll go through a sub-editor, and then it'll go through a revise editor. So it's gone through probably 3 editors before it's definitely before it's been put in a newspaper, before it's been put on a page. But yeah, probably at least 2 before it's gone online as well. And then it'll get revised later if it goes up after just 2 editors or something. So it's quite a long process at the Guardian.
From what I heard from, I know this was quite true in American sports throughout the 80s and maybe the 90s, before social media and, the gadgets that we use to communicate on and read our news. But what I heard was the editor really and truly controlled the narrative of the story and really decided what the story would be about. Is this true?
Not at the Guardian. I think with different papers, there will be greater direction of what stories they want. And I think this happens probably more in celebrity than sport a lot of the time in the UK, where they want a certain angle on, this celebrity who's out and about. And again, I don't know anything about celebrity culture, but and they will get a certain angle, and they can, they'll have certain people they can go to get a certain angle, and certain journalists that can dig around that angle to spin something. And obviously, certain media do have very political agendas. Obviously, if you look at Daily Mail, the Express, they're very right wing. Their front pages are very anti-immigration, pro-Brexit, those sort of things, which it's fair to say I'm against, and I'm against those views, I should say, rather than against immigration and Brexit. I am
they're catering to the viewers
for immigration, just to clarify. And this is why I don't work for certain media. I don't work for any of the right-wing press. I work for Guardian, who are very left-wing in their views and well known for it. And the Indie and BBC are very down the middle. I'm sure with other. I do think it is more the news side of things. So even if you look at the Mail with, say, Rashford recently and the Sterling stuff, none of that is ever written by a sports journalist.
Okay.
Unless they're very forced to. But the Rashford stuff was written by news journalists. Sterling stuff's generally written by news journalists, and the agenda comes more from the news side, which then sort of allows sports journalists to sort of disconnect a little bit from it to say, well, that's not us. They can turn around to the football club and go, well, no, sorry, that's not our department. That was someone else. So I don't think there's as much of that in sport. And I think any time it does creep into sport, it actually comes from the news side. And obviously it's generally pretty cowardly from any editor that does it. But yeah, that's how I see it. And within sport, the only narratives that editors would generally try and control is when it's a big story, to make sure you're on the same page. Because if you're the editor thinking with sport, say, Liverpool Man City title, the big game, make sure you're on the same page. If you've got a completely different view, you think actually your journalist, even your chief writer is wrong, you have to sort of tell them which way to go and discuss it. But it's generally an open discussion about things. Like no one, even when I do interviews, it might be a very, a couple of things. Oh, actually, they've got different experiences from you. Make sure you ask them about this or that.
Makes sense.
But yeah, it's the Guardian's very open and free to do what you want. And yeah, I guess at other papers, and I know of journalists that will be asked to write on a topic each day, but their view is their own. So yeah, it's the news agenda side of things is quite a more complicated beast, and within newspapers, I'm not an expert on it, but yeah, that's probably where the negative headlines as they're pushed by the tabloid and right wing press are generally coming from a different side to sell papers.
Yeah, you just differentiated, perfectly there. The differences between sports journalism and newspaper journalism or news cycle journalism. Question: do you believe there is a witch hunt for footballers in this country? And if so, would you say a certain type of footballer, in your opinion, is witch hunted?
Well, as I say, certain parts of the media have targets, and there still is. If you read Jonathan Liu's piece in the Guardian about the Mail on Sunday's piece about Rashford, there is a certain part of generally these newspapers are run by white middle-class men, probably in their 50s, who make targets of people who are in the public eye, have money. They have this terrible problem with Rashford, that he's a very eloquent young man, speaks well, stands for everything that's right, and there is this sign of you create an enemy to it's just it's a story as old as time. Again, with say the right wing press, the Mail's front pages for years are about make enemy of immigrants, and so there always this idea of creating a common enemy. And so if they can create an enemy of footballers, these rich, powerful, they are powerful people. I hate to think how many million followers Rashford has on Twitter, and that's how he gets things done now. It's the changing world, and a lot of these older white editors don't understand this. And so if you can attack, and they've struggled to find anything to actually attack with Rashford. It's
That's crazy.
Then he buys houses. You attack a man for buying houses to rent out. This is everything you stand for as the Mail, to make money and to keep making money. And yeah, there is a dislike of young black men making money and being successful. And there's a part of it's jealousy, part of it is to desperately keep the status quo within life, I guess, for the aging white man. So yeah, the black men that you put your head above the parapet to speak out on things that there are lots of injustices, and Raheem Sterling does the same. You look at the back page or front page, I can't remember whether it was the machine gun tattoo.
Yeah.
And they just took a photo. There's no question. There's a black man. Well, we're not going to ask him about it. We're just going to put this, and we've made our assumption. Generally, yeah, fine. That is controversial. You're supposed to go and ask him about it, and he's got a very, very valid reason why he's got it. But no, if that's a young black man with a gun on his leg. This is what we think of. There's no other explanation other than that he has some sort of crazed interest in guns because he's from a working class area in London. It's a despicably low level of journalism, and as I say, with Rashford, they just can't. They have to try and demean him,
can't fathom him,
to beat him because they have no response. It was like, so what's your problem with him? That he wants to feed children? I don't understand what your issue is. It's absolutely, it's embarrassing certain parts of the press and it is easy. It's easy headlines like, oh, this man is, he's asking you to give money, but he's also buying houses. Like, well, yeah, that's he is A, paying his taxes, B, is giving a lot of his time and money anyway, and he is earning 200 grand a week because that's the going rate for a top Premier League footballer. It's like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
He's paying his taxes. He's not dodging his tax bill. He's not doing anything. There's no illegality anywhere. The thing you can pick up on is that he's buying houses as a idea to create a stable life for himself after football. As you see how many footballers run out of money immediately. Yeah. He's very sensible. He's got a life plan even after football at the age of 24 now.
23.
23. So this is it. I'm 32. I don't own a house. Yeah, and it's just, there's anyone that, especially willing to question the status quo and to stand up for themselves. Yeah, there is a desire to put them down and to make sure that they try and know that they're not bigger than the media.
Yeah, which is sad. Talking about this whole year has been very interesting. From the health secretary officer calling out footballers initially for not taking pay cuts and for them to do their bit, for the country and the society, and putting that money to the NHS and everything like that. And then recently asked by Piers Morgan, would he take a pay cut? Sorry, not even a pay cut. Would he decline his pay rise? And he wasn't willing to answer that. So there's many things that is.
Well, you go back to that point of trying to make a sort of make Premier League football a target, and and they are an easy target because they're young people making money. It's a very odd thing, but as I said before, it's an incredibly diverse workforce, Premier League football. And generally, most footballers I know come from working class backgrounds. They've seen, very poor areas. They know the impact of it, and they generally know how lucky they are to do the job of doing the amount of money they make. And to attack them, it's like you're not attacking. Fine, footballers make £5 million a year, so at the top level. But then Oliver Dowd and Matt Hancock, when they're attacking footballers, they're not attacking Virgin, who are then asking for money back. Richard Branson's make billions of pounds. He's asking for money to keep his business going. They're not attacking them. They're attacking these individual people. Again, even if you are making £2-3 million a year, you still got a mortgage. You still got commitments. This is why footballers go bankrupt, because they've got massive commitments that you can't keep funding when you retire. Like you have a lifestyle that fits you. You can't change that overnight. Whereas someone like Richard Branson has had 40 years of making millions, and then he's asking for bailouts, and they target easy individuals because they're in the spotlight. It's a very strange concept.
Yeah, no, it's it's very much ties into the relationships between these businesses and the media and things like that. And like you said, that they cannot relate some of them to the young vibrant footballer who maybe is to them flamboyant, arrogant, making money, And I think this really, really does hurt them. You know, this is a thing that they can't seem to grasp. Touching on media, one of the last things I'll say is, do you think there's any correlation at all now between the internet side of it and the actual tabloid side of it, where, you know, maybe something like a Raheem Sterling with a gun on his leg, you know, or a Raheem Sterling where, you know, they're taking pictures of his mum's bathroom, or they're, you know, they never took the picture, sorry, but they, you know, they used the picture. Yeah. And do you think that has any correlation towards, you know, Twitter trolls and anything like that? Or do you think that's just separate?
Well, yeah. There's always been the idea that you stoke the fire, and, you know, it takes, especially with something as easy, short headlines, to again stoke the fire. And yeah, there is a mentality with, say, clickbait or whatever, things that are going to make you interested, things that are quick, short, and sharp. And it's like, you know, you go back to Raheem Sterling, right? Yeah, if you put no explanation to that photo, it doesn't look great. Let's be honest. It's for a role model, it doesn't look great. But then, so if you put that out there, yeah, it's going to look terrible. It's easy fodder for the Twitter troll generation, where, you know, and I'm sure I've been guilty of it in the past, where you see something and go, well, that's terrible, because you know, they're relying on people's attention spans being so short. That's all they want to see. That, oh God, that is awful. Yeah, and so there is a sort of desperation to stoke those fires, to make that go viral as quickly as possible, because that's good for your, you know, for your media brand, for readership, for people to know that you're getting those stories. And those visual stories especially are, you know, very easy. If you can get something into, you know, a tweet's length to attract interest, it is, you know, and to stoke your readership, to make them, you know, you look at Daily Mail commenters, they're generally not the most liberal of people, and to give them what they want so they can be as angrier than they already were is quite a good trick. And, you know, it's a very easy thing to do. I'm pretty sure if I worked in the right-wing media, I'd know how to touch people.
Yeah.
To get people to go. It's quite, you know, it's quite an easy thing to do. Obviously, choose not to until, you know, I can't get a job, then I will sell my soul to it. But it is an easy thing to do, and that's what they want to do. They want you to be angry. That's why you make easy targets. They want you to be angry. They want you to be annoyed. They want you to think that they're as annoyed as you, when they're really not. They're just trying to get you going.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with that, and, you know, I can see that. It's just, how do you, yeah, you know, being myself on social media, you know, I'm not anybody special or anything like that, but, you know, having a blue tick, your comment always shows up on a comment section. And sometimes if I've commented something on a Sky Sports you know, post at a rival fan base, who I don't like, Liverpool, and, you know, I would know how to get under their skin, but it's football banner, you know. It's the same with, you know, football media, and if, you know, they put something out there, they know what kind of reaction that they're going to get out of it. So say, for example, what's happened recently? Pickford, you know, if, for example, they were going to report on that game, the picture I guarantee they would probably use for that game, the Merseyside derby, which happened recently, they would use Pickford tackling Van Dijk. That's the picture they would use. And everybody's comments underneath, you know, we all know what they would be talking about. Maybe they would be talking about that anyway, but that definitely does fuel the fire. I don't blame them for that, because that's something that happened, you know, in the game. And I feel like, you know, clickbait is a real thing, and you should use that as a media outlet. But in terms of the negative sides of it, if, you know, something has nothing to do with that situation, and, you know, you're using clickbait for that, then I don't really agree with that side of it, you know. But yeah, the last question I would have on this side of the media, is, you know, I'm doing this channel. I'm a footballer myself. You know, I give my opinion out there, and maybe it's a bit different to what people have seen before in terms of current footballers being a bit open. What's your view on that, and what do you think of, you know, the whole thing about just focus on football and, you know, basically just shut up and play type of thing?
Well, it's the same with any sort of industry. Well, especially with football, where you know, if you're an expert in, again, I go back to accounting because my partner's an accountant, but it's always my reference point. But yeah, of course, you know, you go out there and that's what you discuss. That's, you know, is what your work is. And if you're an expert in that's what you keep doing. And if you're, say, a footballer and you have, you know, you have the contacts in sport, B, you have the knowledge, you know, of course you should use that. And, you know, I like to think I have some knowledge in football and that's why I use it. But yeah, you know, you have far greater experience in the game than I do, experiences that generally don't get seen. You know, it's still quite a superficial sport. There's, you know, a lot of people's, you know, they'll just watch Super Sunday and that'll be it. It's still, you know, what happens on the pitch is the main thing. But there's so much more to it. So Rich Tapping, those that have experience of it should, you know, make the most of that knowledge. And, you know, you're a very engaging man, and have those discussions, and, you know also, you know, I like to think, having worked in this industry for 10 years now, you know, I know what pushes footballers' buttons, or, you know, what's interests them, what interests me, where they're coming around. But you're going to have a far greater knowledge of that, and of course, you know, that's a fascinating way to use it. And to also, it helps that you can challenge those stereotypes that other people are making. I'm sure people have stereotypes about, you know, about you and footballers of your age, you know, have come through academy systems. And yeah, you know, footballers should speak out of anything that's passionate about them. You're very passionate about this. Whether, you know, Marcus Rashford is very passionate about feeding children because that's his experience of life, and he's using his platform and should be allowed to do that. And, you know, even people like Eric Dyer, who was very anti-Brexit, should, you know, if that's his opinion, he shouldn't be sort of being, you know, be sort of quietened by
belittled or something,
by press officers or something, fearful of ruining the brand. Just, you know, football clubs are still going to make money. If it's, you know, they're permanently afraid it will offend someone if they give an opinion that isn't straight down the line. But
unless it's China.
Yeah, well, yeah. One day we'll get to the bottom of that one. But this is it. It's, you know, if you work in an industry, you shouldn't be afraid of having opinions. Even if I don't agree with them, you should have those opinions. It's, you know, it's a liberal society. Don't be kowtowed because someone pays you 60 grand a week or whatever. But if you know, people have to, you know, should be allowed to do what they want to do, regardless of whether they're in football or any other industry. And you know, it's fantastic that when people do speak out and, you know, do use their knowledge and skills to provide something different and unique to, you know, whether it's the media or politics or, you know, even helping within grassroots football or anything like that. So yeah, no, I'm very much of the opinion that people should be liberated and feel you know, free to do as they wish in life. Honestly.
No, I mentioned China just because of, you know, Ozil. He's been speaking out, and, you know, he, you know, pretty much attacked China and said, you know, what they're doing over there is not right, with, you know, Islamic people. And, you know, sometimes that being that liberated and, like you said, and opinionated, you know, that will get you in trouble. I don't know if that is the connection. I'm not going to speculate on that. But the connection to why he's not playing. But yeah, I'm not going to speculate on that. But you know, that is something there where we need to, you know, overcome as footballers. As I know, a lot of footballers don't want to speak out, not to that extent, but just little things. You know, I know footballers that they can only post on certain days, because if they post on this day, then they're going to get attacked because they posted just after a loss to, you know, a team that, you know, you have a game next week and everything like that, you know. So all of these little things where I feel like the culture needs to change in that way, you know.
Yeah, there's this sort of ludicrous view that footballers aren't human beings, which I've always enjoyed. Where it's, oh, you've lost a game and you've then gone out for dinner with your family. What an absolute disgrace. What do you do? You were pictured having a beer on a Saturday night and you're playing again on Tuesday. It's absolutely embarrassing. Yeah, it is this sort of idea that footballers are, you know, aren't real humans. The greatest line is, stick to sport, stick to football. It's like, well, that's, you know, that's generally, you know, football, what, 3-4 hours of your day if you're a footballer.
Yeah.
Your life would be terrible if you just sat there doing absolutely nothing else. It is this sort of dehumanisation. You know, again, it's sort of portrayed in the media at times that, you know, they're not human. They're celebrities. They're sportsmen. It's a very strange idea. You know, you look at Gary Lineker, who's very intelligent, erudite, speaks well, is passionate about certain topics. It's just sort of just every time someone sticks to football.
I feel like you're more accepted after you've finished. I always believe that.
Yeah.
You're allowed to say your opinion on, you know, what you really do believe, and you know, you see a lot of characters and personalities coming out after their career's done, and you're like, whoa, I never saw that in his playing career. You know, I never knew that he was that funny or he was that witty or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, well, this is it. It's like, you know, you look at Neville and Carragher. Like, Neville was, you know, obviously an excellent but very determined footballer. It's, you know, well,
just
every week,
tunnel vision.
Yeah, so exactly. And now he shows that he, again, very erudite, very intelligent, knows lots about various topics. You know, he's developing properties across Manchester. I think him and Ryan Giggs own most of Manchester now. And so he has success in a number of areas, both A, on the pitch, B, in business, you know, hotel football and things like that, cafe football. You know, there's one at Stratford as well. And
yeah, the internet
and then punditry. So, you know, if you were looking at that man that was just angrily tackling any left winger that moved, you probably wouldn't have expected it. It's just like, yeah, you're good. You've got one skill. Your skill is to tackle people. You know, it's, you know, if someone's a flamboyant footballer, they might think that they're not a Tory or something. It's like, it's the weirdest concept.
Yeah.
It's just dehuman. It's like your life is based on your footballing ability. It's a very strange idea. Well, I'd like to think I'm not defined by my job.
Yes, of course.
And you know, doctor's not defined by being able to perform surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go and see your mate that's a doctor and go, can you just tell me about all the surgery you've done and nothing else? Just talk about every goal, because that's all you can do. Anyway.
Yeah, no. Well, that's a different side of it. Obviously, that's something that, you know, you can't help when people, maybe they will meet you as a Premier League footballer, would probably attest to that. You know, people having that fan behavior and stuff. Of course, you know, they're gonna want to ask you about the reason why they fell in love with you. You know, so I really do understand that side of it. Talking about fans, actually, fan channels has kind of taken over, you know, as a new media source in a different type of way. What's your whole view on fan channels and everything like that?
I think it's a very solid concept, and it works quite well until their egos grow to such a point where they're just shouting. You know, it's when it just gets to the point where a lot of them have, and why probably quite a few have fallen a little bit by the wayside, is it's just shouting. It's just, I've made this opinion, again, people, riling people who agree with you, and they're generally solid opinions. And then you get to the point where to keep making an opinion, you keep having to shout and shout louder. And then the things that aren't interesting on fan channels are positivity. So the only things you ever see from a fan channel is who is shouting. Yeah. Oh, we're top of the league. Yeah, but our left back's absolutely terrible. Like, what? You're 5 points clear. Yeah, but he's rubbish. Oh, I'll tell you, we should sign. And so it's just sort of and there are some very sort of sensible ones that I appear on Man City podcasts occasionally, and there are obviously very sensible. But those ones that really hit the heights on Twitter it is just the people shouting the loudest and making as quick a point where they think their opinion means more than any other fans because they've come up with this idea. And so they can work very well, but I have this great fear that they just sort of just becoming caricatures of what they want it to be. And it's the same with people in the media, and I'm happy to say this, but Chris Sutton just has opinions just so they're contrary to anyone else's, so people listen because they're so obscure.
Mm-hmm.
And I just fear that a lot of the time on those fan channels now, the ones that make headlines, are that they make them because they are being the most critical. And just so I'm sure with Arsenal is one of the main ones that everyone knows. It probably did to some extent, have a bit of an influence on Arsene Wenger's demise, because if you're that prominent making those sort of shouty opinions, that someone's going to take notice and think that represents your fan base. And to be fair, with Arsenal probably did a little bit, but so they do have influence. But I just fear that they're just not the. I wouldn't go first of all for my opinions from a fan channel. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I was alluding to. Do you think that kind of hinders the relationship between fans and footballers, or do you think that kind of adds, to get closer?
I don't think they're ever going to have any influence within professional clubs too much. And I'm sure a few clubs inviting them in to probably just more appease them than anything. But I don't know if I suspect it'll hinder any relationships with players. I'd like to think the players don't pay much attention to the fan channels, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I know firsthand that that is very much spoken about. I wouldn't say every week, but it has definitely been spoken about where, in a few change rooms, it's like, forget what, the fans are saying and just focus on the job at hand. And in terms of not fans, in terms of the stadium, talking about like social media and the YouTube channels and, that side of it, yeah.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't look at my Twitter mentions if I was a footballer. I think that's fair to say. And again, it's easier to criticise someone than it is to be positive. Always has been, always will be. It's easier to spot a flaw in someone than it is to spot what they're doing well. And especially with a lot of footballers as well, that unless you're the man scoring 25 goals a season or making 25 assists, there's it's endless number of footballers that are doing a very good job to the best of their ability in roles that aren't as prominent. And it's to spot those people doing well and is occasionally quite hard. I'm not the best of it. I'm not a great football analyst. And so every time someone like that misplaces a pass, then it's like they're the worst player ever. And it's like I'll go to City matches. In the good old days when you went to matches in 2019, and people would be like, David Silva would misplace a pass, and you'd have this really angry man next to me shouting. It's like shouting abuse at David Silva, misplacing one pass of the game. After 10 years of being probably one of the best footballers in Premier League history, he's just there shouting. I'm just like, what are you gaining from this? Being this angry about one pass in a game that we're inevitably going to win about 4-1. Yeah.
By the way,
yeah,
sorry, carry on.
No, and yeah, exactly, and that is reflected in social media, and it's so easy to send a tweet, like, you know, if you're a Fulham fan the other day moaning about Cavallero missing a penalty, which was admittedly hilarious, but then within a minute they've scored anyway, and it's just like, it's like 90 minutes in a match, you're just shouting abuse for the sake of it because it's so easy. Just take a step back, accept this, you know. Except this is a longer game. It's a longer season. When you're just shouting abuse at someone for misplacing a pass, and it must be endless as a football. If you're a professional footballer, if you actually do, it must be. I suspect it must be so few look at their mentions of what's been said. And I'm guilty of mocking the odd footballer for doing something terrible. But I like to think I'm not. And obviously, you can't read tone on social media either. But yeah, it's a very strange world when it comes to just criticising footballers for the sake of it, and the immediacy of it all. And it's, I was thinking, I was speaking to my partner the other day. It's like, there must be so many people texting. It was after the tennis, and Medvedev was texting, sat next to his bag on court, and and he just finished and he just won. Like 2-3 minutes before. Like, there must be so many people just texting those footballers throughout the match, all their mates going, "Oh God, you missed that." And I was like, and then you sort of, that's fine, and you'll take it from your mates, like, if you're on TV and you missed something, and they know you. On top of that, you're just thinking of how many people are just sending tweets at you. How many people must be sending tweets at City's defence at the weekend for being absolutely despicably rubbish against Harry Kane, one of the best strikers in the world. It's just like, must be absolutely demoralising.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was going to ask you, have you seen a very big difference between how fans are when, you're supporting a team that's not doing very well? So, for example, City at Main Road, compared to City at Etihad. Do you see a big difference between the fans and how they change? Expectations.
The expectations through the roof now, which is, and that is, to some extent, it's obviously very fair, because if you're going to spend 300, 400, 500 million pounds probably on a squad, it's fair that you have those expectations. But I did occasionally, you'll get beat by an excellent Liverpool team, like last season, and you lose in the Champions League to Real Madrid in the semi-final, about 5 years ago now, and people are really frustrated that you've lost this. And I'll just think back to some of the absolute terrible football I saw in the late 90s and early noughties, and I was saying, yeah. As I said before, I've had probably one of the best moments of my life watching Aguero smash the ball past Paddy Kenny. I just think, I get, in terms of being a fan, that it probably means a lot more to, I live in London now. It probably, that is the focus of their week, and it does, impact people's mood. Whereas I'm quite good at leaving it be. Like, my brother is a United fan, will go home and away, and if they lose, it's not worth speaking to him. And so I understand that, and expectations are very, very high, and these are people that are very used to in the 90s shouting abuse at Kevin Horlock, now get to shout abuse at Phil Foden or something, or Kevin De Bruyne. And it still is sort of, I think there's still a mentality, regardless, that it's quite, that you go to football to take out your aggression still at the weekend. It, all builds up to that, where you are shouting to criticise a footballer, and you take out aggression by celebrating goals as well. And so I think it's very hard to change your mindset as a fan of, what you expect from a game. And let's be honest, at City, it's nice to watch us absolutely thrash some team 6-7-0.
It must be nice. Yeah.
But, it doesn't, when you do it as regularly as you do, those games in the mid, under Stuart Pearce, where we win 1-0 against Liverpool, It was like you really fought, you really ground out, you didn't expect it. It probably gave you a greater satisfaction than beating Sheffield United 7-1 or whatever. It's an interesting balance. But I'm probably slightly obscure as a football fan that obviously, having spent many years covering matches and things like that, it does take a little bit of the passion away, and you're not as focused on the fan element. I watch every City game I can. I still got my season ticket. I went to Real Madrid away in March, end of February. The last game of football I've been to see this year. last game of football I'm ever going to see, probably. But yeah, so it is a very different relationship I have. But yeah, I just think that people still, their mindset of going to football is still going to be the same, regardless of how well you're doing. That you're still there. You're paying money to get your entertainment, whether that's from shouting at people or watching people score. And if you're there's no surviving relegation is something to celebrate. Winning the league is something to celebrate. Finishing second, third, fourth, fifth is neither here nor there really now.
Yeah, no, 100%. Just to round off this conversation, very good conversation that we had. Looking at the new age coming into football, there's more cameras, more social media and everything like this. What did you make of the Amazon Spurs documentary, and also previously your team's documentary? Did you think it was authentic enough for you, or what was missing? What was good about it?
Well, I didn't watch the Spurs one, and I'll tell you why now. Because I watched the City one, which FOOTY. So I watched about 6 episodes of the City one. I think there's about 8, 9, 10 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just too polished. I didn't see it as being true. There were certain things that you just know would be left out. City will tell you there was no editorial control, and I won't argue that. But there was somewhere an understanding of what you could and couldn't use. And I just felt it was a bit too polished. Wasn't as raw as, let's say, the Sunderland one, which was, you see in Sunderland Till I Die, which are excellent. And they're allowed to sort of understand the character of the people, whereas I think at City, you were given a flavour of what the characters are like, but they didn't really grow. You were allowed to see one side of Pep, one side of Chicky and Ferran Soriano and some of the players. Whereas I think at Sunderland, it was more accessible areas, speak to people in the treatment room, just going up to them and chatting and having more natural conversations and seeing the general flaws of a football club, which was their own fault. But, the Sunderland one where they were trying to get rid of Jack Rodwell on transfer deadline day. Just leave, please leave. Like, there was none of that at City. So I thought it was just a bit too polished. So then I didn't really want to watch the Spurs one.
I recommend watching the Spurs one. In my opinion, it was better. You did see a lot more of, you probably already heard already, but you did see more of that kind of side of it. Transfers, who Mourinho wants actually in the club, doesn't want in the club, who he really likes, and things like that. I heard that he's not a big fan of it, and he wasn't the guy, giving the green light to it, because he actually came in on the job. But he was very, I would say he was very, you did see a different side of Mourinho that maybe people didn't see. Maybe people saw it on his punditry, but they definitely didn't see it before that.
Yeah, I end up watching a lot of American. I don't really watch any American sports, but I watch a lot of the American sports doc because I always think they're far better done, and they have far better access. So I watch a lot of them, which are generally excellent. But yeah, so sometimes in my spare time watching football documentaries, I just watch about 6 hours and just think this isn't right. It's not. It's a bit of a busman's holiday, I guess, as a sports journalist, to try and watch these things and find the interest. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too cynical now.
No, I would agree that the Man City one was very, unauthentic. I watched the Spurs one. It was a quite a slight difference between the two. Although, of course, you don't include everything because you want to keep things private at that level. So yeah, is what it is.
No.
Last question. This is called supporters section. So, what would you say is the biggest takeaway that you would kind of give to bridge the gap between media, fans, and football players?
To bridge the gap, I would advise letting footballers be themselves more. Release them for the odd interview to say things that they actually want to say. Don't. As much as I like the cliche of yes, it was nice to score, but it was a great one for the team. It's more important. The result's more important than me. Just let people be themselves. Let people find out about you. What do you know about footballers outside of football nowadays? Not very much. They're all very dedicated to the cause now. I just think just provide more personality. Look at those players that people have liked in the past decade, or those people that are different. Balotelli and people like that. People that you can see have personality. Whether it comes off or not, or whether you like their personality. But those are the people that you feel slightly more connection with because you know more about them. I just think that you go through, say, the England team. I couldn't tell you much about anyone outside of Sterling and Rashford because they speak and show who they are and show what passion, what gets them going. Whereas one has to assume that football is it and everything. That the reason they're just desperate, reason they're firing or not firing is purely based on football. Or, it's just more personality, more openness about individuals. It's what you like about general celebrities. Whether it's comedians, actors, musicians, to know personalities. And all people can judge from footballers is they're quite fit and healthy human beings. And that sort of mystic of all footballers are stupid is mainly because footballers have sort of been left behind and just seen as physical people. You look at any dressing room, it's sort of packed with diversity and different nationalities, and no footballer, you're not going to get to the top of any profession being stupid. It's ludicrous, and just to be able to show that personality outside of a football pitch, as you said before, like you just thought Gary Neville was, his personality based on his footballing ability was a miserable man that liked kicking things. So just to show just be able to show who you are away from sport, I think would have an impact. But whether it happens or not, I'd be surprised if it did.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but hopefully we can bridge that gap, right? It's down to people like yourself as well. I feel like you are a journalist where you do want to connect with the footballer and do get to know him, so then you can ask the right questions, and the same way, if I know you, I'm more open to giving that, open interview and everything like that, right?
Well, exactly. I'm sure I'm not breaking down the fourth wall here, but when Burnley's Ben Mee writes a column for The Guardian, I'm the writer that helps him write that. And so he trusts me to say things as him at times. And to write those columns with him, to speak to him, and getting those things out of him that are slightly different, because I've built a relationship with him over 10 years. And to do those things. And so that, and hopefully, and they've gone down very well, and he's willing to show a slightly different side of him as a footballer, and it helps our relationship, and it helps his desire to be happy to speak and not be closeted by the world of football.
A big respect to him, because he came out, and not many people would touch on a subject where they would be that's very it's not anything to do with me. I never did that. I never flew the plane over the stadium and everything like that. So, you know, he did touch on that, and that was very, I'll say, ballsy of him, you know, to do that as,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I think he was, yeah, he was very. I think you know, it's same with anything. Like me answering your questions now in the heat of the moment. You know, I've not prepared any of these or anything like that. You know, you are occasionally worried what you'll say, and that's why football's a media train. And he, in the heat of the moment, after such, you know, I think they lost, was it 5-0? And then you go and you have all that, and you've been frustrated for so long, and he spoke so well in such a succinct way and got all of his points across. Whereas I've spent this over rambling as much as possible, but he was so succinct and got everything he wanted to say out and made his points as clearly as anyone has in football, and showed as much passion as anyone. I think openly about race, you know, racism, and you know, obviously very many passionate people in football, you know, being anti-racist. But it was a very sort of seminal moment, I think, in the fight against racism, just to be so clear and be so prominent as a spokesman. And he didn't have to answer it. You saw he says, they asked him, I think, a tedious question about the match. Like, no, I don't want to talk about that. We're going to talk about this. So yeah,
yep.
He's a very good bloke. So
no, I can imagine. Anyone to do that, big respect to them. And yeah, we need, like I said, more people coming out like that, speaking more openly about football and, you know, behind the scenes and everything like that. And, you know, it could create an open dialogue, you know, for people out there to get to know, you know, people who they just see on the TV. Maybe they don't put in performances that they would like to, and the fans would like to see. But, you know, maybe you could be a bit more sympathetic to them because, you know, there's other things that's going on in their life potentially, and, you know, they are human. And, you know, although they have to do a job at the end of the day, you understand why he might have today had that off day, you know. That's really what this channel was for.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much more influencing your view. And a lot of footballers, I'm sure, will tell you that when they're on the pitch, they're fully focused. But not everyone's the same. Like, people are going to have different views, and so many things going on in your life. And was it David Luiz at the weekend that didn't play because his partner was giving birth? And footballers would be like, "What are you doing going to do to what?" Anyone else would. Any other job, you'd have 2 weeks off on paternity, probably longer.
Yeah, 100%.
One game, you're in a sort of an embarrassment.
I'm back at it. Yeah. No, 100%. You know, my teammate, not going to name his name, but one of my teammates, his missus's dad had passed away last week, and, you know, he missed a few days off, and now he's back in training. So, yeah, I can attest to that, and that is very normal, you know, to kind of be a zombie-like person and, you know, just pretty much get on with it, you know, is what it is. But, yeah, thank you very much for coming on to the channel, Will. I appreciate all your open dialogue and your honesty and everything like that. And hopefully we can, you know, get more people like yourself coming on and sharing a lot of information that you've shared today. If there was one person who you know to bring on a channel, who you've probably interviewed, who's accessible as well, who would you recommend?
As a player,
anyone to do with football.
A footballer I speak to a lot, who's of many experience in football, who's currently in Greece, who's an ex-Sheffield United player called Ayman Tahar, who played for Steaua Bucharest and has played in Japan. He's very interesting, a very intelligent guy. He's very worth speaking to. He's, you know, gone through everything, not being paid in countries and things like that, and crazy owners, and obviously pandemic, and having offers from all around the world, trialing all around the world. He's a very interesting bloke to speak to. And he went from Sheffield United to playing in like the 9th tier maybe, before getting back into the professional game. So he's very interesting. Speak to him a lot. In terms of journalists, I think it's fair to name a journalist. probably one of the people I'm close with is a guy called Nick Ames at The Guardian, who covers football around the world and has seen, football from, Kosovo, Iceland, and he was at that game in Belgrade where, remember when they had the drone and they called it all off? He was in Belgrade for that.
Yeah.
So he's seen a lot in his career, so he's quite a good person to speak to. He worked at Arsenal back in the day as well, so.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of the Arsenal people. There you go.
Okay. That was FOOTY 258, giving you some of the best content on YouTube for football. Signing out.
For more content like this, like, share, and subscribe.